Hello?
Good evening.
Oh, it's a P. Hold on.
Oh,
Oh,
hold on. What's up?
hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hi. How's the audio? Because I realized my headset wasn't plugged in, that was all.
The audio is just fine. I can hear you perfectly well. Let me just check the levels, make sure the little bars are moving as they should be.
Okay.
And I think we're good. Yeah.
Ah, good. What I've done is I've moved the microphone a little bit further away on my headset
Okay.
because I have been re-listening to some of the older episodes
Right.
and I noticed an overabundance of like little mouth sounds, like little breathing in and little
Uh-huh.
like lip
Yeah.
smacks and all that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So hopefully this will make at least a bit of a difference.
Well, I've done the opposite. I've moved the microphone closer to me, and I've told myself just now not to slouch in my chair because I think that's one of the problems that causes my microphone to be very, very quiet as the episode goes on. And I
Right,
also, you might hear some clanking. Yeah.
right.
I don't know if you don't, obviously you don't know this because I don't have my camera on. And when I was streaming, I believed the camera was on me, but obviously I had a controller, I had the keyboard and mouse in my hand, so you didn't really see what I was doing. But usually, when I'm sitting doing anything ever, at work especially, I always have to be doing something with my hands. I can't leave my hands alone. And so
All
I
right.
usually have all sorts of things on my desk that I play with. So one of the most obvious, one of my favorite go-to things to play with is taking the phone out of my case and putting it in, taking it out, putting it back in. That's kind of what I can do to keep my hands occupied. I think for a long time during our calls, I'm trying to remember what I used, what I played with. I think I may have had some plastic gizmo that I played with that didn't make any noise. But since
Okay.
I've cleaned my desk. I've tidied it because it was just covered in. I wouldn't say it's not like rubbish, but it's just stuff. And I've had to put this stuff away. Anyway, this rattling that you heard is the latest prop that I have on my desk that I can't sadly use this episode because it makes too much noise, but I'd like to tell you about it.
Okay.
So it is a strange object, a curious object. It is about, I don't know, 12 centimeters tall or 10 centimeters tall, 8 centimeters across. It's about let's say 2.5 centimeters thick. And what it is, it's a shiny steel hip flask, stainless steel, 30 ounce. So it contains 30 ounces of fluid. And this hip flask is strange, not for the reason that I've never used it because I don't drink alcohol really, but it's got the crest and name of the school that I went to.
All right.
So upon
Okay.
finishing my A levels, I think this is when I received this. I received a hip flask. In the most bizarre thing, one of the most bizarre things ever. And I went to a
Yeah.
fairly posh school, so a very, very posh school, I should say, compared to what I'm used to from Slough. So it just kind of shows how far apart the worlds are. The likes of
But at what age do you actually like get your A levels?
at what age? Well, usually you finish
Yeah.
your earliest you can finish your A levels usually is 17. So when you're
Right.
so,
Okay.
okay, so if I finished my A levels in 2011, I would have been 18.
Yeah.
But if
Okay.
somebody was born in August and they were like the youngest in the year, they could be 17 by the time they finish their A
Right.
levels.
Okay.
So yeah. In any case, that's my hip flask, but I'm gonna have to throw it away because otherwise I will be tempted to play with it during this call. Sorry about that. It was a bit of a show and tell, or just mainly a
It's all
tell.
right.
So how are you?
Did you ever have a? I'm
Okay.
fine. I was just going to following up from what you said. I was going to ask, did you ever have a fingerboard?
Yes, 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 I did. I was dreadful with it, and I think it was just a hand me down from my brothers. It was incredible how they had special little wrenches for them,
Yeah, I remember that.
and the screws. They were kind of high. They were kind of a high quality toy. Thinking back to it now.
Yeah, well, I remember I had two. I had it. There was one which was a tech deck, which was that was like the good
Yeah,
brand,
yeah, yeah. I remember that.
and there was another one. I think it was like Real Boards or something. I don't know, but they were
Okay.
like rather shoddy. And I had one of those, and I remember I had a friend at school who just got loads of them, but you'd get all like the cheap ones just all the time.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, the parts like
The
the
tech
image on
deck.
the bottom of the board, yeah, on the tech
Amazing.
deck, the image at the bottom of the board had all rubbed off, and I think the wheels had come loose,
Uh-huh.
and the trucks had come off and everything. So eventually, it just became like just the board itself, the deck.
Yeah. You can use that for snowboard. I remember we had very big blankets, very big quilts at home. And I remember making
Yeah,
myself a mountain out of them and pretending it was a snowboard. Oh wow, memories.
yeah, yeah. Didn't actually. I remember just like pushing my fingers down onto it so that it would basically be. I could do tricks just by like the sweat of my fingers sticking to the board rather
Uh-huh.
than any actual skill.
Did you try and replicate the tricks that you did on Tony Hawk's?
Uh, I think, I mean, I might have tried, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think just messed about, I think, most of the time.
Hmm.
So, this is episode 10. So we've been going for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Um, so what I would like to do next time, obviously we're going to have this episode first, but what I would like to do next time is I'd like to have a look back at the previous 10 episodes and just go through some points, maybe readdress some of the things we might have said. I'm not sure, but we'll think about that when we get the time of it. But you wanna you gonna ask me something before we get to the topic?
No, I think we can just jump straight in.
All right, okay. Actually, I will give a bit of an update because it's been
Okay.
a while. It's been a while since we last did one of these. I think it was like at the end of August, I
Oh
think.
wow, it has been a while.
Yeah,
Oh yes, I remember because of my new job. Oh yeah.
yeah. Well, what I've been doing in terms of games, uh I've been playing a lot more of
Hmm.
Magic Arena, which the new set came out, so all the gold that I've been grinding up, I managed to spend it doing drafts, and it's all been very fun. Um, there's another set coming out soon, so I'm going to be going back into it doing that. But I've only really been playing just to grind out some of wins just to get the gold. But what I've been doing is I've been playing just random games. Been giving myself like a few hours on a night, so I've played through Sonic Mania, got all the achievements on that, and I've gone back to Final Fantasy 13. I've been playing that on
Hmm.
Steam and having a real jolly time with it.
Yeah. So what would you say has changed since you played it all those years ago? In terms of your
Uh,
approach to it, your perspective, your thoughts on it?
well, I don't know. I think it's a really good game. I think it gets a lot of undeserved hate.
Hmm.
Um, but one thing that is different is that there's one particular there's one particular enemy that's good to farm. Well, if you do want to do all the post game content, you're going to have to get the ultimate weapons and everything. But
Hmm.
there's one enemy that's like good to farm, and there's a few places where you can. There's two main places where you can fight them. One of them is a good place because it's right next to a save point, and you need to keep reloading to get the right drops from it.
Uh-huh.
But the problem with that one is that if you there's like two chests after that area, and if you pick up one of the chests before defeating it, and by the way, you can't defeat it when you get it for the first time unless you've done a lot of training. But if you pick up one of the two chests, it will just because it's a giant adamantoise, it will walk over this glass floor and it will just fall through and then it's gone forever. So you're then stuck grinding the one that's far away from a save point. And so last
Can't you just
time,
reload?
well,
What do you mean
you
by gone
can't.
forever? Does it not respawn afterwards?
No, it doesn't. That one doesn't.
Oh
No.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. Um. So in the past, I first time playing through, I picked up one of the chests, saw that that came along and fell through the floor, and I just thought, right, that's just a thing that naturally happens anyway. Moving on,
Uh-huh.
and I was stuck grinding the more awkward one. But this time, I know what I'm doing, so I didn't pick up any of the chests, and I've been grinding this one, which
Uh-huh.
is still rather tedious. It's still a lot of grinding, but it's easier, and I feel
Uh-huh.
like have a bit more knowledge of what I'm doing
So in the
this
Steam
time.
version on the re-release, they didn't add some kind of thing that you don't have to grind, so it's like you can just give yourself everything because you would have just got it anyway, so why not give it to yourself sooner rather than having to sit and play the game?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because they do that with. It's strange. They did that with 7, 8, and 9, and I think they did it with 10 on Steam.
Hmm.
But they haven't done it with like 13, and I think that's probably that. I don't know. Maybe that's like coding stuff. I don't know. Maybe because it's newer. But then when they released the old ones, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, they didn't do it for those,
Hmm.
which I'm glad they didn't. But
I'm
I feel,
surprised. I'm surprised why they
yeah.
did it for 7, 8, and 9. They're not. I haven't actually played much of 9, but 7 and 8, they're not particularly difficult games. I don't understand why that's there.
Well, see, the thing is, when I first played 7, um, there's one memory I have of when I first played through 7. I remember I was in my brother's room when I did this. And this is something I've got a lot of strong nostalgia for this because it was soon after I got a PS2 and we were playing Tony Hawk's 3, and I just remember a bunch of stuff of it. But during this time, I was playing through Final Fantasy 7 and I got to Cosmo Canyon, and as soon as I realized you could get HP plus and MP plus materia, I bought a load of them, and I just trained outside Cosmo Canyon and really like leveling them up a lot.
Hmm.
Now, reflecting back on that, that's not a good strategy to employ, really, because you can get through fine without doing any of that. But of course, I wasn't as good at the game as I am now. I don't know about it.
Hmm.
I didn't know as much about the game then than I do now. But I mean, it's just like I still really enjoyed it because I felt like, I'm getting all this material, I'm leveling it up, I'm getting more stats. And
Hmm.
it's just I don't understand where this idea comes from that, oh, it's bad actually. You shouldn't be doing that. You should just be able to win if you want to, just by wanting to.
I think you can stroll through those games quite blindly. It's not like some. Okay, there are some really prohibitive games, kind of like Cuphead or Dark Souls, which are just
Yeah,
learn them or else you can't play, basically. But with
yeah,
7 and 8, it's not that bad. I think it's
yeah.
complete. I think it's completely. What's the word for it? Not. I wouldn't say pointless. There is a point to it, but I think it's completely unnecessary.
I think there's a strong bias involved. I think people sort of I think people see these games as like a relic of the
Hmm.
past. So it's like, okay, well, obviously I don't want to do that because we've got so much better games now. We've got games like Forza Horizon where you don't have to do that.
I think it's kind
But
of like they want you to get the gist of it. They don't want you to play it. They don't expect you to play it and to play it as you did back in 1999 or 2000. They just want you
yeah,
to load it up, play it for a little while, maybe get through the story in a record time because you don't have to do anything. You just hold down X during fights or just tap X during fights and just move on.
yeah, it's utterly bizarre to me. So do you have anything you want to follow up with, or should we
Well,
go to the topic?
if we're doing an update, I'll say what I've been playing recently. Hold on, let me. I don't want to do too
Okay,
much. My keyboard and mouse are really noisy, so I'm not going to actually tap them. I'm going to go on Steam on my phone and I'll have a look because I got a new game recently. Oh, that's right. I got Stray. So Stray is the game
oh yeah,
about the cat.
yes.
And oh no! There's another thing that's happened in recent times. I played the Neverhood. Have you played the Neverhood ever? Have you
Is
heard of the Neverhood?
is it Plasticine, or am I thinking of something
Yes,
different?
it's like a claymation plasticine point and click adventure, and it's possibly one of the best games I've ever played.
All right.
That's quite a bold statement, but
Yeah.
I absolutely adored it. It was fantastic. Every moment of that game. There are some puzzles were quite difficult, as in they're not particularly intuitive, and I imagine that children would be stuck on them for months. But overall, the game had just so much charm, and it was so well made. I have nothing but respect for the people who made that, and the music, incredible. So all in all, fantastic Neverhood. I love it. And as
So
actually Ella
is that
showed,
quite an old game now?
yeah, it was for MS DOS, so it's going to
Oh,
be
right.
early 90s, I think, or early to mid 90s. So from
Okay.
what I read, it kind of caught on at the tail end of point and click adventures. So in the 90s, 3D games and kind of exploration games came, platformers, 3D, no, okay, not platformers necessarily, but 3D exploration adventure games became the norm, and the Neverhood was just kind of a little bit too late. But that said, I think it's a masterpiece. I really do. And yeah, so
Right.
since
Okay.
then I've also played Stray. So I got Stray, and Ella and I have been playing it, and that's also adorable. And for anyone who owns a cat, it's a must.
Right.
Or
I've heard.
anyone who's owned by cats, it's a must.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Hmm.
All I really know is that you control cat and
Yes,
that there's robots. There's robots in it. Is that
yeah,
right?
they're friendly robots, and
Right.
they're adorable. I don't want to go into, because it's a fairly new game. I don't want to talk about it too much because someone might want to play it. But I can talk about the gameplay, and I don't
Okay.
particularly think it's a game that you'd enjoy. So
Okay.
a lot of it is just kind of, okay, so the platforming aspect you might enjoy, but the platforming isn't necessarily about timing and learning and, practicing certain aspects of it. I think it's more of just finding out where you have to go and getting there. So it's more of like an
Mhm.
exploration game. And
Okay.
aside from that, there are a few puzzles and things like that. So I think it's perhaps not exactly for you, but it's especially for anyone basically who likes cats, because you
Right.
get to meow on command, and every time you see a rug, you can scratch the rug. It's incredible.
Yes. And scratch everything that you can.
Yeah,
I get. Well, that's tautology.
and
Scratch.
you can also knock things
Yeah.
off surfaces. So if you're sitting on a table and there is a bottle there, you can knock it off.
Oh yeah.
Amazing.
Just get on with being a cat doing cat things.
Yeah, and I think I think it's a real hit. Anyway,
Right.
yeah. So
Yeah.
those are the two games that I've played in recent times.
Right. Okay then. Should we get to the topic?
Go for it. You can introduce it.
Right. Okay. So the topic is, as we've discussed before, how we discovered games.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking one way to go about this is to go sort of chronologically.
Okay.
And I would imagine for you that a good chunk of your early life discovering games would have been through your brothers.
Correct.
So
Pretty much
they would have
exclusively.
something.
Yeah.
Yes. So what would you say like was the first point in which you discovered like a game but not through them?
I actually have the precise memory,
All right.
and it's kind of twofold. So I discovered a game not through any kind of form of advertising. Actually, no, false. It was heavily advertising, but not through like TV or internet or radio. Obviously, internet back then wasn't particularly mainstream. But I remember we were taken to a game shop, which is highly unusual given my parents and they weren't too fond of video games. But somehow we went to a game shop, and I was there with my brothers, and I saw a game which had a fighter jet from World War II on it. And I'm not particularly interested in airplanes, but I thought it looked pretty cool because there were explosions and there were things, and I wanted it, I wanted it, I wanted it. It was for the PC. So my parents bought it for me. We got home. I loaded it up, and it was a real-time strategy game, and I had no idea what was going on. Bear in mind, I was probably like 7 years old, and we actually took it back and returned it. And I feel sorry for the people who worked
Right.
in that shop because they had to take back a product that had been opened, and there weren't any codes, I think, that were redeemed. Like, that were, nowadays if you get a game and you connect it to the internet, that's it. That code's gone forever. So back then, that game could have been resold, and I'm sure it was. But yeah, that whole experience, and it was a sly form of advertising that they just had like a fancy plane and explosions on the front, and I thought it'd be amazing. So that was kind of incidental, just browsing a game store. I think it was actually Game, the shop. And
Okay.
yeah, that was I think that's the first time that I have actively found a game for myself, just browsing a shelf, and it was a dreadful experience. And I don't think I got a game
So
in the end. I think they returned it, but I didn't get a game for myself. I was
so
scarred.
when you first started playing it, were you just like, what is
Yeah.
this?
It was a top-down view of just some things that barely resembled, like a town or a county or something, and I just thought, I'm not having any of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I wanted to fly a plane, and you've got me clicking on stuff and learning. Who wants to do that?
Right. Yeah. Well, I suppose I could sort of kind of expand on that sort of experience, something that I had.
Go on then.
But uh, of course, going back to the start now, I don't have any older siblings,
Hmm.
so I didn't discover any games in that regards. I mean, the closest in that regards would be my uncle because he had a Mega Drive, which he
Hmm.
eventually gave to me. But initially, and not just for the Amiga, but for when I got the PS1, which I'll get to eventually. But I got Amiga for Christmas, and I was 5 years old in 1993, and of course, at the time, I didn't know it was called the Amiga. It was just, oh, the computer. And it was like my favorite toy in the world. Like you could not get me off it. Um, and so I got that from my granddad. Now, he's always been rather technologically minded. He's always been interested in like latest
Hmm.
gadgets and everything. So uh, he he got me that, and I remember the first one of the first games, which I've told you about before, Lemmings. So, but I think that might have came with the Amiga because I think that was like an official, not an official, like a non-copied version. But what would happen is, like every birthday and Christmas, he'd just come with a little. Oh, I don't know how to describe them. It's like these cases where it's got like a transparent lid, and you can like pull the lid off, and it's got like a little key thing, so you can lock it up if you really want to. And it like stores loads of floppy disks.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I can picture it. I'm sure anyone who's my age or older
Yeah,
can picture it.
yeah, and it was just you just like bring all these floppy disks, and they were
Hmm.
all they were all copied, so they all had the like generic floppy disk sticker on with like the word of the game
Hmm.
written on it. Um, but for the most part, I didn't actually. I seem to remember sort of knowing games, but without actually knowing what they were called. I just sort of had like, oh, this game where this thing happens. Like I remember, for example, there's a game called Super Methane Brothers, which
Wow.
I didn't know.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay, continue. Sorry.
yeah, I didn't know it was called Super Methane Brothers. I just knew it. Oh, that game where you play as those people who uh, grab the enemies into this vacuum and shoot them up against a wall. So I knew what the games were, but I didn't really know what most of them were called. I knew like I think I'd use well, I knew some of the big ones like Zool and like Terror Thomas was one of my favorite ones,
Were there
and there was a
no
few
splash
others.
screens or title screens that you would have noticed? I'm sure you didn't actually
Oh
look at the
yeah,
label of the game, but. So, but you don't particularly
Oh,
remember the title screens.
well, the thing is that a lot of that stuff, I would just a lot of things. If it involved words or reading, a lot of it would just go over my head.
Oh wow. Okay.
So, say if there was like written instructions on screen, like at that age,
Hmm.
I just I wouldn't follow it.
Yeah.
I'd just sort of like I'd have to experiment and just see for
Hmm.
myself. So, um, yeah. So like for example, I understood in Terra Automata that the first world was called Woodland, and then the second world was called Toyland.
Hmm.
Um, and then you've got Ghostland and Iceland. It's like okay, I can understand that. And then the last world is called Futureland. But at that age, I didn't know what that word was,
Hmm.
and I didn't, and I couldn't. I remember I called it I called it Fire Achiever because I didn't know what the word was. So
Hmm.
I just sort of called it that, and then that's what it was in my mind. So a lot of it was just a case of yeah, it might have had it would have had a title screen, but I don't think I would have really paid attention. So I just sort of didn't really know what a good chunk of the games were called. And you were talking about that game with the like the fighter jet that you wanted to play, but it was an
Yes.
RTS.
Yeah.
There was, I remember on the Amiga. I don't remember what any of them were called. I do remember there were a few games where I didn't know what I was doing. Um, and there's two there's two that come to mind. One of them I think it's called IK Plus, so it's like a fighting game. But all the characters look the same, they're just a different color. I think there's like a blue, a red, and a white, and maybe another one. I'm not sure. And they're just like fighting in this arena, and I think it confused me. Um, and there was another one which I don't think I've ever known what it was called, but it was another fighting game, and I remember according to my memory, it had quite fancy graphics, like with the arena and everything, but it was just I couldn't understand it. I couldn't wrap my head around it, and I think. Um, I think when I was younger, I sort of had this idea of I didn't really have this idea of a game being bad so much as I just thought like this is too advanced for me. I can't do this.
Hmm.
Because
But is that
oh,
from
was another
understand? Is
one.
that from understanding the game in general, or being able to progress, or having to read something, or is that from not being able to grasp a mechanic, or being stuck on a mechanic, or being stuck on a something? For example, that usually is difficult for children is learning that you have to do a bunch of sequences in a row. Like you have to do, I don't know, you have to time a jump, for example, otherwise you can't make it. So I imagine Tomb Raider, the original Tomb Raiders, would have been extremely difficult for kids, for very young children, because well, they shouldn't have been playing it anyway. But
Yeah.
for very young children, because they wouldn't have been able to use those controls, or they would have struggled with jumps. So returning to my
Probably.
question, was it a gameplay? Was it a gameplay mechanic that was difficult, or was it more understanding?
Well, actually, I can go into that because the first game I played, Terra Thomas, uh, so it's basically it's like a 2D platformer, and you have to collect enough gems to open up the exit, which is like a hole, like in a wall, like in the
Hmm.
first world, it's a hole in a tree, and you have to like jump into the exit, and you advance to the next level. And like my first time playing it on Christmas Day, so this was like my first time playing games overall. I remember. Um, we've got it on video, but also I do actually like remember this. Um, the tree at the end of the first level, in order to reach the hole, you have to jump on a branch and then from the branch jump into the hole. But I would stand underneath, just directly underneath, just jumping on the spot,
Hmm.
not reaching it, obviously, just jumping over and over again, thinking to myself like, I'll get it one
I'll
time.
get it next. I'll
Like,
get it this time.
yeah, like I'll get it eventually.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. Just children struggle
Yeah,
struggle with that.
but if I compare that to there was another game. It's uh, it was it was either called Sky is the Limit or Wings. I think Wings of Fury. I think it was called Wings of Fury. Um, And again, you do play as like a jet, so this might have been the game that you were looking for,
Maybe.
uh, like when you were a kid. So you play as this. I think it's a jet. I'm not too sure, but you start off and you have to uh fly off this like this runway on a battleship, and I really struggled with that for a while. Um, I just went forward and then just fell off because you've sort of like got to like angle yourself right and get like the right momentum and everything. So I
Hmm.
did struggle with that, but I did eventually. I was eventually able to do it, and once you've done that, you've got this island. It's like I think it's like a tropical island, and you've got three weapons that you can use. There's, I think they're called bombs, torpedoes, and missiles.
Hmm.
And the missiles just shoot straight forward. The bombs drop, and the torpedo drops. But obviously, like the torpedo's bigger, but you can't drop as many of them. And I can't remember. I don't think I actually figured out what I was meant to do. I just sort of like shot at random stuff.
Hmm.
And I never really figured out where I was meant to go with that.
Yeah. That
So,
kind of reminds me of Dark Cloud. I had the demo for Dark Cloud on PS2,
yes.
so I was a bit older now, but I just remember I may have been 8 or sorry, no, 9 or 10 years old, and I just remember walking around Dark Cloud, just the field before the town has been rebuilt. Now, as an adult, I know I've looked back and I've watched some videos of it. I think you even
Yeah,
played it on a stream once, and I joined in, as in I was in the
yeah.
audience. But I didn't know that you have to go into the cave and fight monsters and progress in order to build this town. I just walked around the empty field, and I think there's one structure right in the middle that you can inspect, and that is it. That's all I did, and I didn't understand what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, if you remember, I said that when I first loaded up, I mean, what was this? This is back in episode 3 now. I said that I when I first loaded up Dark Cloud, I wasn't familiar with the idea that the analog stick was a separate input
Hmm.
device from the D-pad.
Yes, you thought
So
it
I
was
thought I
replicable.
can't. Yeah, so I thought I couldn't move. I was like moving on the D-pad, and it's like, why can't I move? So I was just this random guy stood in the field doing
Hmm.
absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, after I would say that like just my granddad come along, and it was the same case when we got our PS1, which was a bit further down the line.
Hmm.
He just come with like boxes of just like copied games, and I do have a story to get into that, but I won't get into that just yet. But after that, I would say, because I got my Mega Drive from my uncle because I played Sonic. When he had it, I played Sonic, and then I don't remember, obviously, because there were cartridges and you couldn't really get them copied as easily. So we actually did have to buy the games, but I don't actually remember how I discovered them. I think there might have been a few where I saw it in a shop.
Hmm.
I think there was a Street Fighter 2 variation that I got, which is actually the first game I remember like getting for myself, if you know what I mean. Like actually like being out and picking it out.
On the subject
But I'm
of
not sure.
buying things in shops, I am amazed at how confident I was when I was younger, just buying random games on the shelf. And
Oh yeah,
I don't do this now at all. So, for
no,
example, on Steam, if I'm browsing Steam these days, I will deliberate for a long time, add it to my wish list, think about it, and then only get it if I'm really, really certain. But when I was younger, I would, if I had a bit of money. Okay, so when I was in primary school, I won a competition for the best PowerPoint presentation, and I got £60 worth of vouchers.
oh
Amazing! It was the whole competition was sponsored by GlaxoSmithKline, I think, which had offices in Slough, I think, or some kind of
yeah,
big company sponsored it. In any case, I won £60, and I was at £60 of W. H. Smith vouchers, I think it was, and I remember I spent £30 on video games. I think the other 30 I gave to my mum for whatever reason.
right.
It was probably her idea, but she made me think it was my idea, so I gave it to her. Anyway, So I went into WH Smith and they had a very limited selection of video games. And so I just happily chose two that were on the shelf. And I chose Sonic Heroes, which was one, and I actually can't remember the other one. No, the other one escapes me, but I just literally went in, chose the two that looked the best on the shelf, and that was it. So that was the entire kind of really simple process for me when I was a kid. Whereas now I'm anything really. If I have to buy anything, I think about it for a long time.
Yeah, I kind of I have similar sort of stories about that. But like, do you think that's entirely an age thing, or do you think part of that is that the games that do come out, it's harder to be confident in their quality?
Well, we can leave that until because you wanted to progress chronologically. So if we stick to
Yeah,
the older games were more of an investment, and it's kind of bizarre to think that we just jumped head in to this, considering you spent a lot of money on a physical copy that you then had to play until you had saved up enough pocket money, let's say, to buy your next one. But
yeah.
I can't. I think it has to be age. I think there's no other. Everything else tells me that it should be the other way around. I think nowadays a lot of people, a lot of gamers will buy just games willy-nilly, especially on sale. But back then, I think it was just simply a lack of experience, not really understanding also the value of money. So yeah, you have to ration it. You can only buy games every now and again, but I've got £15. I'm in a game shop. I'm going to buy a game today. That's the kind of I
Right.
think that's the kind of mentality that I had. So I had £30. I was in WH Smith. Let's get £30 worth of video game.
So, do you have another, again, thinking chronologically,
hmm
do you have like another source that you can think of where it's like I discovered games from that source, like when you were
So the
younger?
next kind of step for me, I think, is Friends, and
Right, yeah,
especially when I was living out here in Poland. So when I was how old would I have been? So this would have been 2002, 2003. We moved out to Poland for a few months, and I had a friend who had a computer. We didn't have a computer in our house, I don't think. We had a PlayStation 2, but my brothers usually played that. But in any case, so I went to my friend's house, and he had a computer, and he had all sorts of games. Most of them were pirated. Most of them had just been copied, and it just blew my mind the possibilities that you could have with a computer. And I think when we returned to England, just a few months afterwards, I think that's when my dad bought a computer. He bought like a really fancy, like the top, basically the most expensive thing he could have bought. He bought it. It was Windows
yeah.
XP, and it had two games on it already. It was absolutely incredible, excluding pinball and all of those. But
I was just thinking, oh yeah, pinball.
no, but in addition to pinball,
Yeah,
yeah. So at my friend's house, he had all sorts of games, and one of them has stuck with me ever since, and I play it every now and again, and that's Hitman Contracts. Hold on, when did
right.
Hitman Contracts come out? So maybe that was actually the second time because we had two stints in Poland, so perhaps Hitman Contracts wasn't that time. But in any case, I do recall just all sorts of games on his computer, and we had, yeah, Hitman Contracts was 2004, so that would have been the second time. So I also lived in Poland in 2005. But yeah, so this was very much a source, and it was literally what he had. He introduced to me, and we played it, and it was often that I watched, and then once I was confident enough, he'd give me a chance to play. Did you have
Right.
anything similar? Did you have like a go-to friend who had absolutely everything under the sun, who was like a bit of a library in terms of games?
Well, not to that extent.
Or were
Um,
you that friend?
but I probably was I probably was because um I like in the Amiga days, all the games, I think every game that I got, it was just oh, it's Christmas or it's my birthday.
Hmm.
Granddad's coming over to give me a bunch of games. And that was like always the highlight of every birthday and Christmas. You know, they say like, oh, it's about hanging out with family. And in my mind, it's like, no, when I get home from seeing my dad, Granddad's going to be there. And we're
Uh-huh.
going to get a load of games. And
Did your
that was like
granddad
my
play
big
games
thing.
himself on the Amiga?
Uh, no, he had a PS1 eventually, which he then gave to me. But I will get to that. Um, but I would say, friend-wise, I mean, I've talked before about I had that friend that had the PS1 before me, and I
Hmm.
was jealous.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say there was a few games that my friend Matthew from primary school had, and it was always the same sort of situation. And I do have a few stories to go into with this. A few of the games that he told me about and he showed me. And what would generally happen is he would tell me about a game and I would just be not interested. I'd be like, all right. And in my mind, I'm just thinking, okay, but I've been playing this game and I'm thinking about the game that I've been playing, the games that I know. And then he'd show me it and I'd be like, I want that game.
Uh-huh.
And it would instantly twist me. Uh, and I think that happened with every game that he showed me except for Silent Hill. He had oh, what was it? I think it was like because he had copied ones as well. So Silent Hill, I think it was like in black and white. And I wasn't interested. And there's another game he showed me called 40 Winks, which I was it was a sort of game where it's like, okay, I would be interested in playing it if I had it, but I wasn't like in a rush to get it or everything.
Hmm.
But every game that he'd showed me, apart from those that I can remember, it was always a case of I want that game. Um, Now the first one, and in fact maybe the only Mega Drive game that he did this for, and I remember this. Um, so we had the Mega Drive downstairs, in the dining room, and I was playing Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse,
I know it.
and I was, hmm?
I know that. That gave me nightmares.
Oh, you,
Continue.
oh, it gave you nightmares.
Yeah, I did. Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's keep going.
yeah. Well. Let me just say that it scared me a bit as well. Um, but anyway, so I was playing that, and I got to, I was in one of the later levels. It was like a castle. I remember there was like acid pools and like bubbles and swinging like cannonballs and everything. And he was telling me about this game he got. Now, I don't know if this is how you pronounce it, but this is how he pronounced it, and it's how I've always pronounced it. It's called Ganoog, and it's got this guy. It's like a side-scrolling shooter, but you play as this guy with angel wings, and you shoot all sorts of like gross, weird like creatures.
Okay.
But anyway, I was playing. I was playing Castle of Illusion, and I was on this, not the last level, but one of the last levels, and I was like, oh right, oh, I need to go to the toilet. I'll be right back. So I paused it, I went to the toilet, came back down, and I thought, huh, that level looks a bit different to how I remember it.
Okay.
So what he did was he turned it off and he put his game on, and he was showing me it, and I was simultaneously like annoyed that
Oh
he
wow.
turned my game off that I was playing, but also interested in the game he was showing me.
Hmm.
So I just sort of like went for it, and
Okay.
then eventually I got that game for myself.
Hmm.
As is with a lot of the other games that you showed me. Now, I do want to go into a few of the stories because this is when I got my PS1. Because the way I got my PS1, I mean, my granddad gave me his, and with that, there was a few games, and again, we got back into the swing of just like him coming over and giving us games every Christmas and birthday. And so he showed me a few games. So sorry, I know I'm going around in circles. I'm just gonna have a look at my list here. So one of them, and this is where this is where I need to ask. I need to ask like a moral question to
Okay,
see if you think
I'm ready.
if you think I was being deceptive, or if you think I was well, just what you think. Okay, so one time I was playing Rayman, really enjoying it, and he brought round Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, and he showed me it, and I was like, right, that's good, I like it, I want it. Right
Uh-huh.
now, uh, we switched back, and I'm playing Rayman, and he has to go, and I'm just happily playing Rayman, and he leaves, he left the game, and I was thinking to myself, I won't say anything. I
Hmm.
was thinking, I won't mention it, uh, but if he leaves and it gets late, then I might just go in it because it's like he's left it, so it's not doing any harm.
Yeah.
Um, but I wouldn't. It was sort of like I knew he was forgetting it as he was leaving, and he did come back like shortly after. He was like, oh, I forgot my game, and went to get it, and I was just like, oh yeah, and then
Uh-huh.
like he got it, and it's just like, so do you think because I knew about it and I didn't say, oh, don't forget your game? Do you think I was being immoral, or how would you interpret that situation?
Uh, I don't think immoral. I think you just wanted to borrow it. He forgot it. Would it have been the
Yeah,
end of the world? How long would it have been before he got it back? Probably not that long.
no.
So not at all. You would have got an evening to play.
Yeah, I thought I was like looking back at now, I'm thinking, oh, I was being a bit devious there. But at the time, it's sort of like that plausible deniability thing, isn't it? Sort
Yeah.
of like, well, I'm not doing anything wrong.
Hmm. I
Um,
remember once when one of my brothers came home. Oh, I'm sorry, one of my brothers went to the shop and bought two video games. He bought Need for Speed Most Wanted. So this is PS2 era now. He bought
yeah,
Need for Speed Most Wanted and the Matrix Path of not Matrix Path Enter the Matrix.
yes,
And these were his games. He made sure that everybody knew that they were his games, and he only played them, or he only allowed me to play them when he was present. And he kept them hidden
right,
in a place that only he knew. But for me, this was perfectly acceptable. I wasn't bothered. I didn't go out of my way to try and find these games or to annoy him or anything. And I think it wasn't. So this is like kind of the other end of the argument. I don't think it was necessarily that he was being very rude or very greedy or something. That he was being horrible. I think it was literally that he thought that, or believed, or quite rightly noticed that I was dreadful looking after discs back then, and maybe my other brother was quite bad as well. And he just didn't want these things to be destroyed. He wanted to actually spend a lot of time playing them without having to go to a shop to try and get them fixed and polish them up a bit so that the console could actually read them. And
yeah,
I think with hindsight, that's fair. I think at the time I wasn't too fussed about that either. I just accepted it. But that's yeah, that's kind of like the other end of the spectrum from what you from the situation you just described.
yeah. I remember my mum used to was a childminder at one point for quite a few years, and there was one kid who used to come over for I think pretty much the entire duration of that job. Um, and he was sort of age-wise, I think he was like directly in between me and my brother.
Hmm.
So it would be like sometimes like he'd be like on my side and he'd get on with me, and sometimes he'd be on my brother's side and get on with him and everything. But I do remember one time coming home and they were in the back room, and they were playing Final Fantasy VIII, and they were fighting Ifrit, but they didn't have anything junctioned or whatever, so they didn't know what they were doing. And
Okay. By the way, we've mentioned Final Fantasy VIII a
oh
few
yeah,
times.
yeah,
Anyway, please
there's
continue.
there's that reference. Yeah, so um, they didn't have anything junctioned, and they were trying to fight Ifrit, and I think they sort of like took turns just like attacking Ifrit and doing nothing else. Um, and I was at the time I was thinking like, what you doing? this is my game. I didn't say you could play it. And I
Hmm.
was thinking, because in my mind, it wasn't just a new game, but it was a special game because this one wasn't. It not only was it Final Fantasy VIII, which was itself a fancy game that came in this like nice box, and it was 4 discs, and it was like this
Hmm.
big turn-based game and everything. It was um it was not copied, which was what the case was for almost all the rest of the games I had,
Hmm.
and it was like I saw so much value in this, and I'm like, I can't believe that you just play this game.
So what did you
And
do about it?
I think I don't know. I don't think I confronted them. I think I was just annoyed.
Hmm.
Um, but I think the fact that they didn't junction anything just annoyed me even more.
Yeah, they were just doing it wrong.
Yeah, but there was also one time I had a Game Boy Advance. I came home and he just started playing on it,
Hmm.
and I mean this is going to be more understandable from most people's perspective, I think. And he had this bad habit of tapping the screen with his fingernail. To like say, "Oh yeah, I've got this. I'm doing this." And he'd like get
Uh-huh.
his nail like tap the screen, and that would just really annoy me.
There's something I just remembered. Just quickly returning to the subject of friends introducing me to games.
Yeah.
I remember how I was introduced to RuneScape, and
Okay.
this was kind of interesting for me because I can't exactly remember if it was after I returned from Poland, so this would have been 2005, or when exactly it was. I don't know. I don't even remember when RuneScape became a thing. In any case, it was in the early to mid 2000s. Definitely mid 2000s. Um, and I just remember arriving at school one day, and everybody, literally everybody, was talking about RuneScape. Everyone had characters in all the boys. None of the girls, I don't think, but all the boys in my class. Some boys in other classes, and everyone was talking about it, saying, "Oh, I've got an Addy pickaxe, and I've got this, and blah blah blah," and I had no idea what was going on, and I just sat there, just kind of smiling, trying to understand, trying to pretend that I'm part of the conversation, and then at the end, somebody said, "Oh, we're playing RuneScape," and I had no idea how it was spelt, and he said, "Just search Run Escape," and that's how I got to it. And then I ended up making an account, and I got to level 63 fishing. So I that means that I clicked on sparkling, like flashing bits of water on the screen many, 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 many times.
Yeah, I know my brother he got into RuneScape. I remember I don't know, we were at somebody's house, like one of my dad's friends maybe, and he had a kid.
Hmm.
Um and he was talking to my brother about RuneScape, saying like, "Oh, I've got this so and so or whatever," and I was just there like, "Yeah, I don't know about this.
Hmm.
I don't know what this is." So were you sort of like, did you feel left out when they still started talking about RuneScape, or
Uh,
was it a case of
yeah, probably.
right, right,
There's
yeah,
one other thing about RuneScape that was quite interesting. So RuneScape had a free version and it had a paid version. The paid one had loads of more stuff to do, more
yeah,
quests, more items, more of the world map, more to explore and things like that. More functions, more abilities. Yeah, it was designed very deliberately to get people to pay the subscription. The subscription, I think, was £3 a month. It wasn't so bad, but for me, this was unattainable. Not just because I didn't have pocket money. I didn't really get pocket money. I just generally was given anything that I needed or anything that I wanted. But in my mind, I had a barrier. I had a very, very, uh, very vivid barrier that I shouldn't be asking for video games. I shouldn't be asking for my dad to buy me the RuneScape subscription because, it's a waste of money or it's this, that, or the other. And I just remember one time I finally built up the courage to ask for a month's subscription. I said, "Could you, could I perhaps, could you please, could you, I need £3.50 or however much it was." And my dad says, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And
All right.
I always had this vision in my mind that my dad hated video games, everything about them, and he just tolerated it, that it was my hobby. But here, yeah, he just went for it. Yeah, go for it. Have fun.
Do you think that was because it was only £3?
I don't know. I think if my dad was aware how much time you could spend on RuneScape and the fact that I was talking to people from all around the world, adults, kids, anybody, I think
Yeah.
that would have been scarier if he knew. But the fact that it
Yeah.
was £3 definitely was helpful. I mean, I remember I asked him. This is when I was a lot older. I asked him for a PlayStation 3, and that was £450 when it was new, and that was a huge amount of money.
Yeah. So how old were you when the PS3 came
So
out?
I would have been. PS3 came out in England in beginning of March 2007, and so that would have made me 14. Yeah, so
Right.
14-year-old me did not have £450 to spend.
Yeah. See, I started university in 2007.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a few years between us. Um, so there was want to go into a few other games that Matthew introduced me to and showed me. One of them being Croc Legend of the Gobbles. Now that is the game that when
Amazing
I saw
title.
it,
Sorry, just
yeah,
just say that again, please, slowly.
Croc Legend of the Gobbles.
Of the Gobos or Gobbles?
Gobbles,
Haha.
Gobbo.
Okay, I thought it was Legend of the Gobbles. That would have been even better. But
Yeah,
fantastic.
right,
Please continue.
right.
Just brilliant.
Um,
10 out of
and
10.
the thing is, that game, it's like it's not great. It's decent, but I don't know. There's just something about like a new game that like gets me excited. Oh well, that got me excited. That this was the game that when I first saw it and you left and I started thinking about it and like my imagination is going around, going wild, like imagining like all these different like platform setups and everything. I was downstairs headbutting the settee out of excitement
Uh-huh.
just at the idea of playing this game.
Yeah.
Um, which I eventually probably also I think I also did that for Final Fantasy VIII, which was the big
Hmm.
one he showed me that was like, oh, this is the real deal, this one.
Hmm.
But before then, there was I've mentioned before Pokemon Red, which he didn't actually show me, he just sort of said to me, you should get Pokemon, and I was like, all right then, and then I went and got it.
Okay.
Um, the other one was Armored Core,
Hmm.
and I do have a bit of a story to tell you about this one because now Armored Core. Um, Now, usually with the style of game that it is, I wouldn't usually, it wouldn't usually particularly be interested. So, it's got like a lot of like guns. It's very mechanical and it's sort of got like this realistic atmosphere to it. I suppose. I think it would be something that you probably would have uh, enjoyed. Enjoyed isn't the right word. I think it would have appealed to you as a kid
Hmm.
more than it should have appealed to me. But I remember the idea that you could like buy different parts and then like try and like put them together to like just create this robot.
Hmm.
That really appealed to me, like the creative part of trying to like put things together to make everything work. But he showed me this game, and I didn't. The thing is that I didn't like asking my granddad for games. I always,
Hmm.
like you were saying before, like you don't like asking for things. But I remember Uh, I remember one time, I think I sort of, kind of, I don't exactly know how I went about it, but I did sort of like hint at it or whatever. And I think, I don't know what it was, but he was sort of like, he wasn't really having it. He was saying like, right, you play games a lot. You need to do some reading.
Uh-huh.
So he said to me, I tell you what, if you read a book, I'll get this game for you, right? And so I was like, okay. I wasn't very enthusiastic about it, but I really wanted this game. So I looked in my cupboard, and I had two books. I don't remember what I think one of them was the Famous Five or whatever. I think that was the one I eventually chose, and there was another one. And my only criteria to choosing which one of these books to read was how short it was.
Hmm.
So I think there was one that was small, but the text was smaller as well, so they could like sort of fit more on a page. And there's another one, and it was like one of them was like thicker than the other one. So like this was like a puzzle. I was trying to like figure like which one's shorter, which one's shorter. But anyway, I went for the one that was like physically the bigger book, and I was like reading it, and I was just thinking, I do not care for this. This is so boring. I just don't care. But I read it anyway. Um, and I don't think I went the whole way through. And I remember my mum was saying like she didn't know what was going on. She just saw me reading the book and she was like, "Oh, you're liking that?" And I was just like, "Yeah, yeah, it's all right." And she was like, "Oh yeah, I used to read that as a kid." And I was like, "All right, okay, oh yeah." And she was like trying to like tell me about like some of the characters and everything, and I just did not care at all.
Hmm.
Um, but I got so far, and I think I said to my granddad, I was like, and the thing is, he lived like quite far away, so we wouldn't see him. Actually, no, he used to come over quite a lot, but we wouldn't see him like all the time. But we did see him a lot more then, like back then. So I mentioned to him, like I sort of said like, right, I've been reading this book. I'm up to this point. I've done this, and he was like, right, okay, we'll see about getting you that game then. So what happened was, I think we went to his house, um, and it would have been like a family trip. Um, and I remember he used to show me like his method of copying games.
Hmm.
So we went to Blockbusters and he rented out Armored Core and he used to show me on his computer like the soft I mean of course I don't remember any of it now, but he used to show me like the software where he'd like, put the game in and then put a blank disk in and copy it. And then he made because what he would usually do is because we'd have like these CD cases but with uh like the game cover on the front and on the back, like the back of the case, as if it was part of the actual game, but it was
Hmm.
just like printed out on a bit of paper. But he actually just did it like in this word art, so it was just like blank, just this sort of like this darkish blue thing with like this word art, and
Hmm.
it said "armed core," not armored core. Um,
Brilliant.
yeah, because I think I mentioned, I think I was like, oh yeah, armed core, because I might have just called it that.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, and then and then I think he returned the game to Blockbuster, and it was just a case of that was my first and only experience of seeing like him copy the game
Hmm.
firsthand. But yeah, I got that game and I really enjoyed it. It's a really good
Fantastic.
game. Yeah. Uh, so what I think that's pretty much it of games through him. But do you have
Hmm.
is there anything else further along for you?
Well, okay, so perhaps um, I've spoken a little bit about games that were pirated or that were copied. And that was basically my friend had a huge catalog, and every now and again, even when I got my own computer, um, when I visited him in Poland on holiday, he would sometimes give me some discs to borrow, and I took them home to England and played them. But I think then the next thing that I would say, the next kind of step along the discovery of games would, for me, probably be advertising. So this would have been either in the PlayStation magazines or on TV or just even within the PlayStation 3. So I don't think I would have been struck by advertising for anything on the PlayStation 2. I think it was definitely the PlayStation 3 era onwards. And there were two main sources, I would say. So one would be TV at the stage. So this is the early, I don't know, say 2007 to 2010. And the other one would be the PlayStation 3 magazine. And I think given how prohibitively expensive PlayStation 3 games were back then. I remember I bought Skate for £50. That's the most money I've ever spent on a video game, I think. That
Yeah.
was a lot. And yeah, so these were I would just literally read an article about a video game and thought, yeah, I think I really need that one. And that would have been it. And I have this one distinct memory of a game being sold to me on one sentence in this magazine, and I actually went out and got that game. Admittedly, I think I would have got it anyway, but it was in the PlayStation 3 magazine soon after the release. There was an advert. There was like on one page there were a few throwaway comments. So these were things that a bunch of games that they didn't have time to write or they didn't care about enough to write a full review of, and they just had a few sentences for a bunch of games, and one of them was Pro Evolution Soccer 2007, which would have come out into, no, was it Pro Evolution Soccer 2008 perhaps? In any case, I just remember the short review, literally two sentences being, sorry, I'm trying to get the order right because okay, I'll just go. So one was, you should spend, you can get through 12 seasons of Master League in a weekend or in a few days. Definitely worth pulling a sickie over. So this was the idea for adults, that they wouldn't go to work,
Oh
they
yeah.
would pull a sickie just to play Master League, which is just like a career mode where you manage a club. And for some reason, this really, really sold the game for me. I really wanted it. But the funny thing is, the feature that they described, Master League, I never played. I only played, exhibition matches or just choosing two teams and pitching them against each other. Or I spent loads of time in the editor designing my own kit or something like that. And it's bizarre. The advertising was literally just two sentences that some bloke wrote, while probably not really caring too much about it because it was just on a small page somewhere. And that's what sold the game. That's what earned that company, I think, £25 that I paid for it.
When you said, "Oh, well worth pulling a sickie over," that really sends me back to those like old PlayStation
Yeah.
magazines and that sort of like 90s 2000s culture.
Yeah. But yeah, that was so advertising. That's one. The PlayStation Mag. I remember Def Jam Icon that came out for the PlayStation 3. I think that was a launch title, and I remember reading that in a PlayStation magazine before I got the PlayStation. I was considering buying that game, not really understanding what it was. So I think the article showed screenshots, and I was just amazed at the height, at the quality, the fidelity of the graphics. But I didn't understand that it was like a rhythm dance game, combat kind of weird mishmash. And I've never played Def Jam, and I probably never will. And I'm glad that I didn't actually get it, despite the advertising that I was really, really wanted to get it, because I probably would have hated it, and I probably wouldn't have played it at all. So I think the two launch games that I had were Motorstorm and Resistance Fall of Man, which I played to death. So those were good choices.
So, were there any games that you'd see like an advert for in a magazine or something, and it would sort of like capture your interest, but you'd never get it, or you'd never like look into it any further, and then you just sort of think back to it and you think, I wonder what that game was like, and then when you look into it, it's like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't get that.
Well, there were two actually. Well, let's go for one. So Red Faction Guerrilla Warfare, or whatever it was. It was one that had loads of destruction. And I remember
I
reading,
think I,
yeah,
yeah, I think I played a demo of that.
I
I
remember
think.
reading that it was supposed to be amazing. The possibilities are endless for destruction and all this. But for some reason, the images just looked really, really boring, really bland, and I wasn't particularly fussed by it. Another one was Mercenaries World in Flames, and I remember that was on the front cover of a PlayStation magazine. And that was the feature article, loads of stuff about it, and I just thought, this is boring. Why would I want to buy this game? This game looks horrible. This game looks dreadful. And I never bought it, and I'm glad that I didn't buy it. But The Red Faction Guerrilla Warfare, I actually saw that afterwards. My friend had it, and he showed me it, and I just thought it was incredible. I thought it was genius that you could have. It could be so varied that you can. I think it. I think you do you re-enter places that you've already been, and the damage that you've done is still there. I can't remember exactly.
I don't know.
In any case, I was absolutely mesmerized by it, but by that point, I didn't buy it. But I think I wish I did.
Yeah,
I
I
wish I
just
had.
remember like back in, I had a couple of PlayStation magazines, but this is like PS1 days,
Hmm.
and I remember seeing like, I think it was like an advert for Roscoe McQueen and one for Jersey Devil, and those games were just like, I looked at them and I was just like, oh, that looks good. I'd like that. That would be so cool. And
Hmm.
then eventually I watched a video. I was like, oh, Roscoe McQueen. I remember that being like a big thing. Like in my mind, it was a big thing. It
Hmm.
wasn't a big thing. And I watched like someone do a video on it, and it's like, oh, you're a fireman and you go through this building putting out fires.
Hmm.
I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, that looks awful.
I wonder what the case was with the Mercenaries game. Was it actually a big game? Because I recall seeing it as the feature article. I thought it looked dreadful, but I thought it must be really famous or something. But since I don't actually know, I don't think it is particularly a big game. The publisher might have just paid for the article to be written, and paid for the article to have been front and center of the magazine to boost sales. But it's strange.
So was there any and again, this might be a difference in age thing might influence the answer here because I've had a few instances of this, but have you ever had it where you've played like a demo disc and you discovered games through that, and then you've got the games because of the demo that you've played?
Well, I think back when demo discs were big and they were important,
Yeah,
I if okay, so let's go back to the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. Any demos that we had, I would have been too young to go out and buy them, or just given my personality, I wouldn't have asked my parents to buy them for me. The most obvious one
yeah,
is I think there was a game on the PlayStation 1 demo disc that we had that we really enjoyed. It was Karaki or Karachi or something like that. It was like a block game, and
uh,
you
yes,
kind of destroyed or deleted blocks, and you had to do it in a certain pattern, or you had to solve puzzles.
I know. I've never played it, but I know the game. Karushi, I think it's
Karushi,
called.
yeah, something like that.
I think.
In any
Yeah,
case, that's a game I think we really wanted to get, and it was on a demo, but we never did. Perhaps it wasn't available, or perhaps it was difficult to find. Later on, the PlayStation magazine had PS3 demo discs, but I'm struggling
yeah,
to think of a single game that I later got as a result of playing on that disc. That said, there were lots
yeah,
of there were lots of demos that we downloaded from the PSN store that I downloaded from the PSN store that I just played the demos and I was perfectly satisfied with them. Super Rubber Dub being one of them. I was
all
I was
right.
content with the
So
demo of that.
you just played the demo of Super Rub Dub. I thought,
I think later on I got it.
yeah,
So I would have got it
yeah,
late, much later on, but not as a result of having played the demo. I think that was more just a nostalgia kick
yeah.
that I wanted to play that.
I had Super Rubber Dub
I remember trying to get the world
back when
records.
the.
That was
Oh
fun.
right.
It
Yeah,
was
quite a feat.
quite a feat. No, it was only on the first couple of levels, but we just because we had the
Yeah.
demo and the leaderboards were available, you could compare yourself to the leaders, and because the first
Right.
levels are so simple, it's actually fairly
Ah,
easy to get close to the world record. And I remember
yeah,
that's what really impressed me back then.
yeah. Like fractions of a second of like
Yeah,
very
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
technicalities and all that.
So it's kind of tilt your controller left and forward, then bounce up so the ducks jump, and then suddenly down, and that's all the movements that you needed.
Yeah. Well, actually, a bit of a demo disc story. So, uh, one place that I mean, not really much, but the childcare centre. So I was introduced to a few games there. Not, I mean, there was a bunch of games I just did not care about, but um, strangely enough, it was the first place I saw Final Fantasy VII, which, if you remember, this was the same place with the kid who didn't have a memory card,
Hmm.
who asked how many reactors I'd blown up.
Yep.
Um, so the thing is with Final Fantasy VII is that I had seen it, or like I'd seen Cloud like on magazine covers, just like when we were out and about, but I had no idea what the game was. And then when I was shown Final Fantasy VIII, Seven just sort of like exited my mind, I suppose.
Uh-huh.
And then eventually, when I saw it at the childcare centre, like the actual game, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's that game with the blonde with the spiky hair guy.
Hmm.
That's Final Fantasy VII. Oh, that's the one before Final Fantasy VIII. Oh yeah, oh it makes sense." And I remember playing it, and you know, like when um you know when you play a game and you're used to a different game that's like a bit like how I said that I thought carding monsters turn them into your GFs.
Yeah.
So you sort of like used to other games. Well, I remember I was used to eight at this point when playing seven for the first time,
Hmm.
and I was like, okay, so I've got three bolts, but then I used bolts and I've still got three bolts. What's going on? It's not going down.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I wasn't really like familiar. Like, oh, it's MP. But yes, I remember someone else brought Final Fantasy VI, and it was like, oh wow, Final Fantasy in 2D. This is so weird.
Was it? Did you think it was
Final
like a
Fan-
feature? That it was like its next best thing, or did you realize that it was an older game?
well, I realized it was an older game, but it was just a. I think the thing is with like Final Fantasy in my mind, because of my introduction to eight, it was something that was presented as so big and like grand and everything. Like Pokemon is on the Game Boy, it's 2D, and then you got
Yeah.
Final Fantasy, which is a big 3D game, and it's got all this. It's still turn-based and everything, but it's in 3D. And then going back and seeing six, it was like, oh wow, Final Fantasy, but 2D.
Yeah.
It was just really strange. But this is where I was also introduced to the Tony Hawk games,
Hmm.
and I remember. As you know, I started off really bad on those games, and I eventually got really good. But what happened was, I remember playing them, and I was thinking like, right, I want those games. So what we did was, and I've never done this for anything else, but one time when we got home, we were like scouring demo discs, like, do we have it on a demo somewhere?
Hmm.
We might have a Tony Hawk game on a demo, and we were scouring demo discs, and we managed to find one. Um, managed to find a demo disc with Tony Hawk's One on it, and it was like an earlier build of the game, so like all the fonts were different and everything. Um, and it was just one level, and we just played it loads just for ages, just this one level, because it was like,
Yeah.
oh, this amazing game that we found. Turns out we've got a demo disc. So if we hadn't have done that, we wouldn't have even known it was on there, and
Hmm.
we wouldn't have like looked it up or cared about it. But yeah, so
What era should we move
uh,
on to next? I'm quite aware that I think the next thing that I'd be able to talk about is probably the last one, which is the era of Steam and the internet. So if you have anything
right,
else that you want to stick to.
yeah. Well, I think um when it comes to like PS2 games, because I think once you get to a certain point, like for me, I think the PS3 was this point where it had just become like online, and
Yeah.
it became rather ubiquitous. Like nothing was like hidden or secret anymore. It was just,
Hmm.
you can go online and find games or whatever. But I think before then, when it was the PS2, um, uh, so one thing there was something that there's one thing I want to go into which I really, really liked. Um, so I remember I got my PS2 and I started with Tony Hawk's 3 and I got a couple more. I got Dave Mirra's BMX2 and Armored Core 2 from
Hmm.
WH Smith's eventually, and then I'd slowly just like be exposed to games and play them and everything. Now, my friend Bridge, who I have mentioned him before, I mentioned him because you might remember there was a time when we were running the Game Maker Club at school,
Hmm.
and the teacher was annoyed, but we sort of won him over to our side by
Yeah.
explaining like what we were doing and everything. Um, but the thing is with Bridges, what happened was, so I sort of knew him vaguely because we were in the same like house block, and so uh, like I talked to him like in the queue at lunch and everything. And one day he just said like, "Oh yeah, my mum's going to get me this game if I do well on this test." And I'm like, "Oh right, do you know what game is it?" And he said, "I can't remember what it's called, but it's like this fantasy game." Oh, and then turns out it was Final Fantasy 7. Now he was after Final
Oh,
Fantasy 8, but he
okay.
ended up getting 7. But it was like, oh wow, oh yeah, that's amazing. Um, and then eventually he showed me Final Fantasy 10. He didn't really want to, but I sort of pestered him into it. But he showed me Final Fantasy 10, and that at that point it was like, hold on, Final Fantasy is amazing. PS2, brand new graphics.
Hmm.
It just all community added like up together, and it was like, oh wow. And then I got like obsessed, and that was like a game I'm thinking, right, I'm going to save up for that game. But I remember, so like I discovered a few games, a few like PS3, PS2 games through him. But there was one time where we'd played a few RPGs, and so what we decided to do is we thought to ourselves, right, look, we know that Final Fantasy is great. We both agreed on that. And we both know that RPGs are great, and so we agreed on that. And we thought, why don't we go online, see if we can find a list of RPGs and make a note
Mm.
of them? So what we did is we went to GameSpot and we went to filter PS2 RPGs, and we just went through the list. And anything that was like that stuck out to us, we wrote it down. Um, And so it was just amazing. It was just like this new world of like, oh wow, this is like a genre of games. There's like so many of these games, and we wrote them down. And he got Magna Carta and Xenosaga Episode 2, I think, which I don't know if I think he liked Magna Carta. I don't think he liked Xenosaga 2, but those are the two that he got. And the two that I remember the two that I wrote down that I found interesting was Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga and Disgaea 2. Now, Digital Devil Saga, I did get that eventually. And the story with Disgaea 2 is that I was once in town, I was thinking, right, I'm gonna treat myself, I'm gonna get a game. So I went to game the shop and they had Disgaea 2 there, and I was looking at it and I was just like, I don't know. I really don't know. And I was really like unsure of myself. I was thinking to myself like, right, I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to see if I can find anything that looks better than that. So I remember I went to Game Station. I think there was a few other ones, and I was sort of just like looking around. And in my mind, I was just thinking to myself, there's got to be one that looks better than Disgaea 2.
Hmm.
And it got to the point. It got to the point at the end of the day before I was going to go home, and I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to get Disgaea 2. And so I got Disgaea 2, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. So
Hmm.
that's
Success
happy ending.
story. Yeah, success story.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a very happy memory when it comes to like discovering games.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think aside from just like seeing things in shops, which I did, I remember there was one time at one birthday where my dad said, like, right, it was a day before my birthday. It was like, right, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the shops and we're gonna you can pick a game out and I'll get you that for your birthday. And I was like, all right then. So I found Shadow Hearts, thinking, yeah, that looks all right. I might get that. It looks turn based. I got it. Really enjoyed it, and now it's very rare.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. And then since then, it's just been a case of, um, like I've said before, just stuff online.
Hmm.
It's very hard to like. I mean, I do think like if you asked me any particular game that I know that I've played, I think I could probably point out like, oh, this is how I know about it. But I
Hmm.
think for most recent, like the most recent times, it's going to be just like a vague sense of like, oh yeah, online probably somewhere.
Yeah. I wanted to. So, two more things that I think I can add to this conversation
Okay.
today. Uh, I don't want to forget. So, perhaps they're going to be quite quick. So, I'll just go through. So, what I wanted to do is have a look at my Steam library. What I might do is I might send you a screenshot later so you can add to the video.
All right.
But my
It's been a while since you've had one of those.
yeah, my Steam library is kind of it's kind of weird. Um, and what I would probably do, maybe it's not going to be too boring, is I'll just go through. I'll just pick out a few of the games and just mention how I got them, how they were given, how I yeah how they came to be in my Steam library is probably a good way to describe them. And so I'll start for the first one, 7 Days to Die. And I don't know if you know this game. Do you know 7 Days to
It,
Die?
it's a game that I know by name, but I couldn't tell you what it is.
So 7 Days to Die is a zombie survival game. Think Minecraft, less blocky, zombies and crafting and mining and crafting and basically surviving. That's it. It's
Yeah.
a fun game. It's not particularly well polished. It doesn't look very nice, but it is quite popular. And I got it for free. That I don't know at all on the internet, who was on my friends list, said, "Hey, do you want to play 7 Days to Die?" And I said, "Sure, but I'm not going to buy it yet because I don't have money on my Steam account." So he bought it for me, and he wanted me to play it, and I played it for a while, and then I got bored of it, and I felt really guilty because he wanted me to play with him, and I thought,
Yeah.
well, I don't have to if I don't want to. It wasn't my fault that you bought it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that was quite strange. So that's quite unique. Um, the next two games on my list are actually quite interesting. So Arma 3 is one, and Assetto Corsa is another. So Arma 3 is a big military shooting game. It's like a mil sim, so a military simulation game. And the other one is Assetto Corsa, and Corsa is a racing simulator. Now, the reason I mention these isn't because they are simulators. It's because they were both games that are similar to games that I've played in the past that I've just kind of found online, but I didn't kind of spend enough time researching them or thinking about them, and I kind of got them quite quickly. And I didn't realize that they wouldn't run very well on my laptop back then because they were very demanding. And I had a gaming laptop in 2012 or 2013. No, sorry, 2013, 2014. But it wasn't that good that it could run these games smoothly. And Arma 3 is a kind of game that is for people who really enjoy the genre and enjoy gaming and enjoy learning and figuring out new mechanics. It wasn't particularly for me, and I've since on my good computer now, I've played it, but sadly it's not too too up my street. And Assetto Corsa is very much a similar story. So that's another racing game. It didn't run very well on my laptop, and ever since it should run absolutely fine, but unless you've got a steering wheel attached to your desk and you've got yourself a cockpit and you're really enjoying it and you're just either racing other people online or trying to perfect your lap time, then it's not for you. So those were
Just
kind of yeah.
yeah, just wanted to ask, right, just to clarify, I had to have a cough there, so there's like a switch on my headset that can turn the microphone off, so I just want to make sure that it works so you didn't hear me coughing.
I did not hear anything.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Uh I'll move down a fair amount. And here is a game that kind of showed up on the internet one day, and I instantly knew that I had to buy it. and that was Carmageddon Reincarnation. So Carmageddon is a car racing game, but you also have to destroy other cars and you can run over pedestrians and things like that. It was banned. The original Carmageddon was banned in multiple countries for
Yeah.
encouraging road rage and encouraging killing people. I don't know how precise their research was, but in any case, Carmageddon. When I played a lot of Carmageddon 2, that was another game that was copied for me, and I had on my PC, and I also played at my cousin's house in Poland, my cousin's computer in Poland. But Carmageddon Reincarnation, as soon as I saw it advertised online, that was it. I was buying it, and I enjoyed it. I played it a fair amount, and I wouldn't. That was a kind of a fortunate and happy transaction of happy kind of balance of marketing and actual quality to the game itself. Now there's a substantial number of games in my Steam library, such as Crisis 2, such as Burnout Paradise. What else could there be? Dirt 3. These are games that were just on a Steam sale and they were very, very cheap, and I just got them. And that was a period of time that has passed. I no longer do this. I no longer buy games because they were particularly cheap. I buy games because I want them. Goat Simulator is another one. And so
I've done that
I
before.
wonder if you, exactly, I was about to say, I wonder if you've done the same
Yeah.
thing where there's been a Steam sale, you have, let's say, £8.52 in your Steam wallet, and you think, oh, let's just buy some stuff. Maybe I'll play that. Maybe I'll play that.
Yeah, I have done that. I mean, one thing that I remember is I remember um maybe about 2010, 2011 or whatever. I bought this is like a physical copy of Halo 3 for £5.
Hmm.
Now, I think I have no interest in playing Halo 3.
Hmm.
I didn't have any interest then, but I don't know. I think it was sometimes I think um uh, and it's all like I know it's all relative. So like the amount of stuff I buy now is very limited, and I've never been one to like go out and spend loads of money. But I think uh, I do have my impulse. I have had like my impulsive era,
Hmm.
which I mean, compared to others, wouldn't be impulsive at all. But for me, looking back, it's like, yeah, I shouldn't have bought those things.
So can you name a game that you have that's currently in your library on Steam or any other platform that you regret buying?
I don't think there's any I particularly regret buying because I don't think I can remember like spending much money on anything. But I just remember like having just like Xbox 360 games
Hmm.
that like they were just cheap. So I just thought, oh, that's cheap. Um, like Halo 3 and uh, Fatal Inertia, I think.
Hmm.
What was the other one? Fusion Frenzy 2. But yeah, aside from that, like if I look through my Steam library, a lot of it is there's a lot of it that I got like through Humble Bundles,
Hmm. Yeah, me too.
but also I don't know, there's something like about Steam libraries. Um, there's a particular type of nostalgia for me about the dawn of digital games, where you get like, these games that come out on PSN and all that.
Hmm.
Like Braid, but I did really like Braid. I don't know, there's something nostalgic about that sort of era to me, where there's just like all these different games that at the time it was quite a novelty. This idea of a game that was made by like a small team or
Hmm.
was like made on the cheap, made to be small. So that's the sort of like nostalgia I get from that.
Yeah. Another category of games that I have are ones that saw advertised when I was younger that I never played, and when I was older, I finally had a good enough computer and money that I could play them. And so one example of that is Half-Life. I recall Half-Life existing. I think Half-Life 2 I recall. back when I was at school, but I had no interest in getting it on the console as part of the Orange box, and I had and I didn't have a computer good enough to run it. So, but I finally got it, and it's in my Steam library. I still haven't played it, so that's kind of embarrassing. Yeah, other
I think
games are. Yeah, go.
I think the Orange Box is another one of those games I got on the 360 just
Hmm.
because it was cheap. I
Yeah,
remember I played Portal. Didn't finish it, but I played Portal, but
Portal's
I didn't
fantastic. You
play.
should finish it. That's
I
all
got
I'm going to say on that matter. Portal and
I
Portal
got
2, play
far.
them.
I know I got past the incinerator,
Uh huh.
the bit where you're supposed to be rewarded with cake. I got past that bit. I don't know how far from the end I was though, but it just seemed
That's
to.
quite close to the end. If you'd like, we can play Portal 2 cooperative. If
Right.
you have it on your computer and it runs quite well.
Um, I don't have it.
Okay. Anyway,
Um,
I think you'd enjoy it though.
yeah,
It's all sorts of puzzles. Now, I've
right.
got one
Okay.
more category of game that I would like
Okay.
to address because when I send you the screenshot of my Steam list, you're going to notice them, and I think you're going to have to censor them. So I'm sure you can imagine
Oh,
where this is going. I'm just going to name the
okay.
titles, okay? So feel free to bleep this out after, later on. If
I'm not too bothered about.
no, so one of them is genital jousting.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know that game.
You know of it. You haven't played it probably.
I, I've not played it, but I know what it looks like.
And there are some other ones which are just anime story visual
Yeah,
stories. Then
yeah,
none of them actually have nudity. However, there are patches that you can download off the internet to enable nudity. So I'm sure the developer
right.
originally made them to be completely nude and then added extra versions to attempt to cover up the characters. But in any case, these are
Yeah,
joke gifts, and there's a whole category. I'm sure loads of people do this. Uh, I'm not sure. You seem very sensible, so I'm not sure you did this. But loads. So, for example, when I think I got gentle jousting from my brother. It was my birthday, and he wanted to get me something stupid that I would never play, and so he got me that. So
okay.
that was something, and the other ones, the anime ones, they are just, or I don't know, yeah, they are just ones from a friend who also wanted me to to have these games as a permanent stain on my profile. I am aware that you can delete things from Steam, but I don't know if I will.
Right.
Anyway, so that's the Steam library story that I wanted to say. Those were just a few games and ways that I kind of stumbled upon them, or ways in which they uh, came into my possession.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not bothered about. I mean, people come. I know people are like, oh, if I play a game on the PS3, I have to platinum it, otherwise it's a stain on my profile. I'm like, I don't
Oh
care.
yeah.
I'm okay having 50 0% listed.
Hmm. I've mentioned this before. I do not care about trophies at all, or achievements, or
Yeah.
anything. I This dictates practically everything that I do. My enjoyment of anything, of a book, of a film, of a stroll in the park, none of it is me following what is expected of me. So I don't watch a film and try to adapt myself to the film. If I don't particularly find the film interesting, or I find some scenes boring, my mind will just switch off. I'll do something else, and then I'll come back to it if it's interesting. That's maybe an extreme example, but in the case of video games, if I start finding something uninteresting, or to take taking Skyrim as an example, I don't feel the need to do absolutely everything that that game has to offer because I experienced it my own way, and my experience is personal. And this goes not this isn't
Yeah.
just like Skyrim because that's a story-driven game and so on. Even a game like Counter-Strike, which is just shooting non-stop all the time, Sometimes you shoot, sometimes you throw a grenade. Point is, you're up against the enemy who are just kids online who are angry and who want to win. And even there,
Is,
I just do my own thing. If I, people often, I get often accused of, if I play badly, they say, "Why are you playing like an idiot? Play properly." But if I'm playing well, they don't say anything. So, and in both situations, I just do whatever I want.
is that the game where you used to go around with the revolvers?
Oh yeah, that's the revolver game.
Yeah.
Yeah. In any case, those were just some examples, and yeah, like you, I could not care less about achievements and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well,
unlike
my
you, I think you
yeah.
you do enjoy the odd achievements if they are of interest to you, right?
Well, I think I don't know. I think I do like going for them because in my mind it's sort of like if I really like a game or even if I like a game, I want to see what's there. I want to
Yeah, I get
experience
that. I
all of the
understand that.
things. Um,
Here's a
but
question:
I do think, yeah.
have you ever bought a game because of the achievements?
Oh yes,
Yeah, can you give me an
yeah.
example?
Uh, Trivial Pursuit.
Trivial
I used
Pursuit.
to.
Why? Okay, that's
I've
interesting.
I've done this. No, honestly, it's just I don't know. It's a strange sort of thing where people will because with the way that the PS4 works is because all your trophies build up to like a level and you build up like a collection and all that.
Hmm.
People do make a thing out of um people do make a thing out of like trying to get as many as they can, whereas I'm sort of in between in a way. Like if you have a look at my platinum list, as you'll see, there is like loads of there's a lot of games that are just like it's just there because it's easy, but there's also lots
Hmm.
of games that are not easy at all, that take a very long time, like RPGs. That if my only goal was to just get all like as many trophies as I can, I won't be playing those games. But I'm happy to like mix it up. But I haven't really done that for a while.
Hmm.
But I mean, the thing is that even like in my mind, um, even if this is where I'm going to go to my thing now. Um, in my mind, if something is like a bad game, then I don't feel like I don't know. I feel like this is one of those awkward times where I don't have to describe what I'm saying. I feel like something can be boring, but I can still feel like I've come through the other end, and it's like that
An
was an
achievement.
experience.
Yeah. So it was it
It,
was
it
it
was
was a conclusive experience.
Yeah. So, as you were going through your Steam library, what I'm going to do is I'm going to my PSN
Hmm.
profiles. So I'm going to type platinums. I've got 85 platinums. Haven't actually, and the last one I got was September the 3rd, 2020, which was Borderlands 2. So that
Hmm.
was uh, I used to get quite a lot of these, but I haven't actually played like PS3, PS4 games for quite a while. So that's why the last one
Hmm.
was in 2020. But there are some uh, easy and bad games here. So, for example, uh, Fritz Chess. Now,
Okay.
you can do that by going online and putting in the game state. Like, go to a website, put in the game state, and it'll say, "Oh, do this move," and then that will just get you all the right moves to the end.
Oh yeah, that's just playing as the AI.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, there's Dynasty Warriors 6 Empires, which, to be fair, it's a Dynasty Warriors game, so I thought I would like it, but I didn't.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's basically so you've got loads of I think they're like loads of bronze trophies where it's like play as play as this character, play as that character. So there's like 50 however many bronze trophies just for like each playing as a different character. Which, by the way, Guan Yu is a character in Dynasty Warriors, because I know you've mentioned Guan Yu on Smite. Is that
Yeah,
right?
Guan Yu's a hero.
Yeah, yeah. So you've got all these characters, and you you have to play as them once, and then there's like three trophies, which is like earn enough loyalty points, and it's just stuff where it's like I don't understand what that means. You'll do some fight, and then someone will talk to you, and it's like I like you more, thank you, blah blah blah, and you get so much points or whatever. It's like I can't do this, but I managed to.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, Terminator Salvation, which is apparently really easy, but I found it quite hard. I didn't enjoy it,
Hmm.
but I found it quite hard. I'd die on the same points over and over again. Uh, X-Men Origins Wolverine. You can just turn on all the cheats,
All
make
right.
yourself
Okay.
invincible. Follow a guide to pick up all the dog tags along the way. Cloudy with a chance of meatballs. Again, very easy. I mean, The Walking Dead. That's I mean, that's easy because all I have to do is complete the story, and you can't not get the platinum. But I've done it three times, which I didn't want to play it three times, but I've done it three times. So it's the PS3, the PS4, and the Vita.
For three different platinums, right?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Um. Yeah.
But if you look at it a different way, the Steam achievements or completion or trophies or gamer score, these are
Yeah.
all a game in and of themselves. So I kind of
Yeah.
understand. I understand why people do it.
Yeah. But I mean, so I've gone few. I mean, there's a few more. I won't go through all of them, but there's a few more where it's just like, oh yeah, that was just easy.
Hmm.
But also looking through like my trophy list, it's like, oh yeah, I really like that was a good game. I really enjoyed that game. So like Borderlands 1 and 2, Ukulele, I really I,
Hmm.
I really enjoyed that game a lot. Rainbow Moon, absolutely loved it. Um, Final Fantasy 10 and 13 and Lightning Returns, loved those.
Hmm.
Um, and
I'd just
even
like
ones that I
to,
didn't,
sorry, I would like to just do a quick
yeah.
shout out to Kim Jong Soup, wherever he is.
Oh yes, who can't forget Kim Jong Soup,
Anyway,
and yeah, and like a couple others that I went in didn't think I'd really like them, but I did end up really liking them. Infamous First Light and Riptide GP2. Uh,
yes,
yes, with your favorite character.
yeah, Fritter.
Yeah, yeah, I don't look like Discoverin 2.
I think I
Um,
actually got that for Android. I got it on the Play Store
all
because
right,
it was. I think there was a promotion and it was like 15 pence or something, and I got it.
all right,
I think
yeah.
I think I could download it still.
It does come across as very much like a mobile port,
Yeah,
but I
but it
did I
was it
did
was
end up
like
really
a,
liking
a
it.
small PSN type game, right?
Yeah, yeah. But like Burnout Paradise, really like that game.
Hmm.
Borderlands, really liked Borderlands. Motorstorm RC,
Hmm.
that was really good. So yeah, like I look through and like Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4.
Hmm.
I see all these games and it's just like it's nice to have like a thing here where I can show people like, look, this is a game where I've done all the things
Hmm.
that is like in this list. And it's an easy way of showing them that.
Yeah.
And it's like I think people misinterpret it as like an ego thing. But
Hmm.
it's not an ego thing at all. It's not like I feel like I'm better than people or I'm better than you at this game. It's just like I just want to show you that like I like these things. I like going through all these games. And it's just a good feeling.
There's one more thing that I wanted to share, and this is a fairly unusual for me method of discovering a game. And
Okay.
that is, so a few years ago, I was online and I was watching a stream, and somebody on the stream, somebody in the audience was just saying that they created their own game. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I
It's
I, I might know where this is going, but
was the game
now
made in yeah?
now before you reveal this game, I just want to point out, completely unrelated, that there's we norm like in each episode we usually have two games that we talk
Uh-huh.
about, but we've managed to avoid one of them so far. So let's see if we can get through the rest of this episode. Uh, yeah. So Yes, continue this game that you found
So
that
Level
someone
Up
mentioned
Land
on the stream.
1. So Level Up
Oh
Land
yeah.
1. This would. So
All right,
we've
yeah.
managed to to reference it. By now,
Yeah.
anyone who listens to these, who's been watching, listening, knows what Level Up Land 1 is. Level Up Land 1 is a role playing game that Devon has made, and this is really unusual for me because I've had I've tried games in the past. I think, well, at least once, that somebody that I know or somebody that I have interacted with has made a game themselves and has shared it with me just to not to show off, but just to they're proud of their product, they've made it. But I've never. Firstly, it's quite rare. I think it's generally you don't come across people who make their own games very often. But it's highly
Yeah.
unusual that I went out of my way to find the game and to give it a go. I actually trying to think of I was before this evening I was trying to think of what actually pushed me to go ahead and download Level Up Land. And the only thing I could think of is that I think the sequence of events was such that it was Mule's stream. I think you mentioned it in the chat. He said, "Oh, he'll have to have a look at it at some point." I mean, I don't blame him for not doing it. He has a million games that what he wants to play and he wanted to play on stream. But I recall seeing this message on the stream, and I just Googled it out of curiosity, searched it on the internet out of curiosity, and when I realized that I think it's this at this stage when I realized that not many people have played this game, and for me it'd be kind of like it would be kind of like an experience of exploration. That's what made me want to play it. So the fact that it wasn't very well known, the fact that I wouldn't be able to just find a guide online on how to do it or watch a tutorial. The only person who I think there are only few people who had played it and showed their gameplay. So I think that was what was so attractive about it, not simply because I heard somebody mention it on stream or I
Yeah.
saw somebody mention it on stream. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that it's very, very unusual, and that was a positive experience all the way through.
Yeah. And I did. I remember. Um. I found that video, like your first, like your episode one of that, and I
Hmm.
didn't know that you were the same person, like on that stream.
Hmm.
I thought you were someone like completely different. So I was just like, oh hi, and usually, and if someone like uh is like, oh, I'm gonna try out this game, it's sort of like I want to be like welcoming and greeting and everything and like polite and all that
Uh-huh.
without coming across too corporate-y, if you know what I mean.
Okay. I know
Do
exactly
you,
what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, which is always like an awkward thing. It's like, well, you're playing the game that I made, so it's like I'm gonna I'm gonna be nice, but
Well,
I don't want to be like,
there was I watched a speed run of Undertale, and during the speed run, the creator of Undertale donated money and had a message, and I didn't feel it really felt sincere, and it felt just an interaction with the community as opposed to anything else. And I think
yeah,
the donation was for a charity, so obviously it made sense for the creator as well. It wasn't simply that he was trying to advertise himself. But I get what you mean
yeah,
as trying to avoid that kind of either a sense of superiority or like a bit like well corporate as you put it.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I hate corporate speak. I hate all that sort of stuff. I don't like marketing. I can't do it. I
Yeah.
can't. I can make games, but I can't make them like I can't advertise them. I can't like make them
Hmm.
appeal to people if you know what I mean, other than like through the game itself. It's
I
like
wonder. So this is going to be completely off topic. I wonder how you'd
yeah.
manage as part of a team. So
Um
the games that you've made that I've played, I'm sure there are plenty of demos and things that you've just kept offline. but of the two games that you've made, I get a sense that they are a labor of love, that you've poured your life into this. You've poured your your passion, your heart and soul into it. You've created these on
Yeah,
your own. What at what point? Okay, let's say you were to assemble a team to make your next game. In the ideal world, you had money to pay these people. I'm not talking like a AAA studio, but just a few people to help you. What sort of things
yeah.
would you delegate? Would you delegate the story, for example, to one person, the artwork to another one, and you'd keep the sound design and the gameplay, for example? Or what? How would you approach it?
I don't know. I think that's very hard because I don't know. It's sort of like I think I find see the thing is like when it comes to like I've had a few people, for example, who've played Level Up Land and they've said things like, "Oh, you need to make it so that when you run, you've got a higher than 5% chance of running." And in my mind, it's like, but you don't know the whole context of the game. You don't know about the escape spell, and you don't know about this, and you don't know about that.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know. I just find it. There's something, and there's something that I sort of stick to that I admire in others when I see it, and it's this idea that people stick to what their vision is. Like people have a vision, and they're not trying to uh, make everything appeal to everyone all the time.
Hmm.
And I find it very difficult uh, to deal with trying to think of how to word this. I don't want to say I find it hard to deal with criticism because I think that I mean I think I can struggle with that, but I think I'm better than what I once was, and I think I'm confident in enough in knowing what I'm doing
Hmm.
that I can sort of see a distinction between someone like responding to something like a gut response to something and someone who um, is basing their ideas off more information.
I think
But
there's definitely a
yeah,
balance here that you'd have to strike. I mean, I get the impression, and
yeah,
you could interpret this as criticism, but you could interpret this as praise as well. I get the impression that you make the game how you would want to play it if you were even if you were a new player. So obviously, when you play your own game, you know everything in and out. Maybe you forget some things and you rediscover them, but
yeah,
this is the kind of thing that you're after. You want to play a game that appeals to you. And
yes,
from one perspective, this is admirable because you're this is kind of uh, it's creation in a fairly in quite a pure form because you're not appealing to anyone else. You're not marketing the game from the very earliest stages. All you're doing is making something that you would enjoy.
yeah,
On the other hand, you're not taking into consideration things that other people would struggle with. So you're playing a game where at the beginning, okay, let's take this escaping the escape. It's very frustrating when you start, and if you watch the videos of me playing Level Up Land 1, I definitely get frustrated. I don't allow it to overcome me, but I definitely get frustrated by it, and that is dying a lot. People these days,
yeah,
and I think even back in the days of PlayStation 1 and early on arcade games, it was frustrating to die a lot. It was frustrating to lose your progress. Level Up Plan 2, you don't necessarily lose your progress as much. You just slowed down, let's say. But it's definitely something that you, if you wanted to create the game, make your game more accessible to others and take on feedback, I think that is something that you would have to address. And it's not as simple as allowing everyone to escape every fight because that would just kill it because that defeats the whole purpose. But
yeah.
there is a kind of there is something that you could do to reduce the frustration that new players have.
Well, with Level Up Land 2, I you actually, although you don't actually see it, um, you actually start the game with a few thousand experience, I think,
Hmm.
because the initial stats at the start of the game, and I thought to myself, and it would make it more akin to how it is with Level Up Land 1, I suppose, and I think um, it would add its own quality uh, if you didn't have that. So at the start of the game, if you didn't have that experience, like that bonus experience that you start with, you'd be able to kill squirrels and raccoons without any
Hmm.
issue, and probably like hawks as well, and maybe a few others. But a lot of things would just kill you, and
Hmm.
so you would very slowly have to like do a few warps and like keep gaining some stats.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it's sort of like that's like looking back at it, I'm thinking that's an acceptable form of gameplay, and I could have done that.
Hmm.
But for the ideas that I wanted to promote with Level Up Land 2, I I ended up giving a few thousand experience like at the start
Hmm.
because I thought it fit the game better.
Yeah,
Um,
fantastic.
I think that worked out. Whereas I think with Level Up Land 1, I think there's something about the Eagles, the fact that they're such a what
Sorry.
what what,
Just
what,
the Eagles are unique in Level Up Land 1 because they give you so much grief at the beginning when you learn about them, and you have to get
yeah.
stronger in order to fight them. And then afterwards, you spend a couple of hours drawing 1,000 strikes from them, and they're all of a sudden there. You feel sorry for the little guys.
Yeah, but yeah, like the Eagles, for example, like okay, a big thing, and there's someone else who's played a bit of it, and as soon as he realized that attacking an eagle would reduce its attack power,
Hmm.
he like messaged me saying like, "Oh my God, attacking eagles make them attack you less,"
Hmm.
and and it was like a big revelation moment.
Yeah.
And I remember you, I don't remember when it was, but I remember you figured out at one point that if you hit them, they do less damage, and that is the sort of thing where, like, at the start of the game, if you come across an eagle, there's nothing you can do. You could just go try, you
Yeah.
hit it once and then try and run. I
Yep.
mean, even at that point, hitting it once is still beneficial because it gives you more time to run.
Yep.
But um, it really is the case that you start off and you're weak and you kill enemies and you level up. And I think also, and the fact that you start with 30 health,
Hmm.
um, so you start with 500 shields and you start with 30 health. And I think the fact that when you kill your first rat, your health jumps from 30 to like 70 odd,
Hmm.
and that's like a big jump in health.
Yep.
Um, I think that captures like the idea of level up land, the first one,
Hmm.
rather well.
Yeah.
And I think that I could have done the same for two, but when it actually came to making two and putting it all together, I thought that's not what I want for this game.
Hmm. There is there is an art to there is there's a lot of finesse to Level Up Land 1 and 2 in how they've been put together, how they've been made, and I completely
Yeah,
understand what you say with regards to um, piecing things together, the first experiences and this feeling, this really huge sense of satisfaction in leveling up for the first time, or double going from 30 to 70 odd health. It's
yeah,
and learning about the eagles and that kind of thing. But the sad part of it is there are so many people that will just be completely put off by the fact that,
yeah,
oh, I've left the pier, like our Lithuanian train enthusiast. Um,
yeah,
and I think for Level Up Land 1, I don't think you should. I think it would be wrong or unwise to go back and make the game easier in hindsight. I think by making the sequel more accessible, but making it more accessible, but keeping it true to its own identity was a very wise move. I think it was a very good idea.
Yeah, because when it came to making level, the thing is that um when it came to making Level Up Land 2, like the ideas in place, there's things that I've had like running in my head for a long time. Um and so, what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to just make Level Up Land 1 again,
Hmm.
but with different spells and different
Yeah.
enemies. It was a case of I wanted to make a new game,
Hmm.
and that's what I've done.
And I think you did a very good job.
Why, thank you. I think I
Return,
have as well.
returning to discovering games. I'm conscious that we've been speaking for over 2 hours now.
Yeah,
I don't want to keep you too long, and I've got to finish as well. I wanted
okay.
to know if you have any concluding thoughts or anything else. Sorry, I was fiddling around with the USB stick and I just dropped it and made a noise. That's me. Yeah. So, do you have any concluding thoughts, or have you got any other stories that we can end on? A story that we can end on.
I don't think I don't think I have any other stories that I can think of. I think I've pretty much touched on all like
Hmm.
the main like avenues of discovering games. But I think I would like to say that I think that there's something special about having gone from just getting random games from my granddad at birthdays and Christmas to, for example, that time when me and Bridge were looking online, like looking for RPGs,
Hmm.
like specifically like we know what we want, we know what like our thing is,
Yeah.
and actually going out of our way. And I think I don't know, I don't want to say like oh that it's a lost art or whatever because I think now the fact that the information is all available is good enough. I mean, of course you can be overburdened by too much stuff,
Hmm.
but I think uh, I think it's good like to see that natural progression.
Hmm. I agree.
Although, quite oddly, As Your Dreams, which I listed as my favourite game of all time, that was a game that my granddad just gave us randomly as a set, within a bunch of random copied games.
Hmm. Yeah. I think all of my favorite games, looking back, I can't I can't think of one that became my favorite that I actually, I did research and looked it up and then discovered that yes, it is a fantastic game and I do love it. I think they're all just simply stumbled upon. They were all stumbled upon.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. It just seems I think I often think that sometimes you'll play a game and it'll just even though like you go into it thinking I like this, and sometimes it's just like oh I like this a lot.
Hmm.
Um, my example is ukulele, because I went into that game knowing that it was criticized for being really bad, but I really enjoyed it. And like I mentioned, Burnout Paradise as well. I thought, oh yeah, that game's really good. But in my mind, it was just like, oh, it's a racing game, which I've always liked them. They've never been my favorites,
Hmm.
but like that's just an example of one where I played it and it was like, this is a lot better than what I was expecting, and that's just good. Nothing bad
Hmm.
about that.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So
thank
do
you
you have
very
any more
much.
closing thoughts?
No, I think we've covered everything.
All right, okay.
Yeah, thank you very
It's been
much.
a it's been a good 10th episode.
I think so. I'm
Right.
sure. I'm sure we'll prepare something for the 11th one.
Yeah. Well, I have a few things that I know I want to talk about when we get to that. Um, if you'd like, I can because I've been re-listening to the old ones. If you like, I can uh like make a notepad and sh file and share it with you of just like random things that we've talked about,
Yeah, I
and so
think
you
so.
can pick things out and say like, oh yeah, I've got something to say about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Have a good
Okay.
evening.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.